I recently put up a community post asking you guys what are some of Fortnite's most nerfed items of all time, and today we are going to take some choices from that poll that you guys commented, and we're going to revisit some of Fortnite's most nerfed items of all time. Before I get into it, this list includes only weapons and items, no mechanics, so like turbo build nerfing, that will not be on here. As well as this, vehicles will not be on this list, just strictly weapons and items. So let's get right into this. First, we gotta talk about the MK7 assault rifle. This weapon received a massive nerf, and I guess that's partially because this weapon just launched in such an overpowered state. When the MK7 launched in Chapter 3 Season 1, it did 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25 damage in its respective rarities, right, from common to legendary. But shortly after its launch, there was a patch to reduce the damage by 1, so all those numbers I just said, cut them down by 1. They also reduced the environmental damage by 4 and decreased hipfire accuracy, because if you remember, what people were doing is they weren't even carrying an SMG, they were just running into boxes with a pump shotgun and an MK. I honestly really can't even emphasize to you how overpowered this weapon was when it launched. It definitely needed this nerf. I'm not saying it didn't, but it was a massive nerf. But those weren't the only nerfs that this weapon received. In Chapter 3 Season 2, they reduced the damage to players by 2. So now, instead of doing 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24 damage, you are now doing 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. So what used to be the rare damage number was now the legendary damage number. That is a massive nerf. As well as this, they also nerfed damage to structures by 1. And yeah, this is all just a massive nerf for a couple of reasons. One, it basically made it so that it took 1 or 2 more bullets to kill in a specific rarity. For example, the legendary rarity, when it launched, did 25 damage. That is a 4 bullet kill on somebody without shield. But now, since it was at 22, it was now a 5 bullet kill. It's still a really fun weapon to use. It is one of my favorite weapons of all time, but wow, it is nowhere near what it was like when it launched. And next, I'm going to throw in a quick cheat one here. That is llamas. And man, they absolutely did my boy the llama so dirty. If you remember this thing, it used to give 500 of every material. And yes, while the nerf to the materials going from 500 to 350 was massive, you may not remember that in Season 4, it actually at one point went from 500 materials to 200 materials each. They also removed rockets as a drop, so you could not get any rockets from llamas. The only way to get rockets on the map was from like a chest, supply drop, or an ammo box, but they were tough finds. But in my opinion, the cardinal sin that they committed against the llama, and it's not even the fact that they nerfed the materials down to 200 apiece, it's actually the fact that they made the llama move. This is no doubt an absolutely massive nerf. You used to just be able to silently crouch walk up to the llama, just pickaxe it, or even just search it in silence and it be done with. But now, and I can't even really say now because llamas are actually vaulted, but if you go up to a llama, it's going to jump around the map, it's going to shine like a bunch of lights, it's going to make a loud noise, you have to shoot it. You're just asking to get third party when you get a llama, but it wasn't like that back then. It was really easy, really quiet, really simple to get a llama. Llamas used to be like absolute godsends back in the day, but now when you find a llama, it's just like, like it's all right. Like I'll take the extra materials. You never really need the ammo anyways, maybe like a couple heals or something, but now you're just like, I don't really care about it. I'll take it. But back then, if you got a llama, you were set for the entire game. This thing received multiple massive nerfs. Next, let's talk about the Reaper Sniper, and just like a lot of other weapons that will be on this list, at one point it was one of the best weapons in Fortnite history. But most of the nerfs that you'll see on this list are revolved really around just decreasing the damage of the weapon, but that's not necessarily the case for this one. I'm on the patch notes right now for the Reaper Sniper rifle, and before I read this long list of nerfs, just keep in mind that this thing was absolutely overpowered. Do I think that they needed to nerf it this much? No, I didn't, but this thing absolutely ran and really just destroyed Chapter 5 Season 1. There was no reason to ever use an assault rifle in Chapter 5 Season 1. This is one of those weapons that you could put in any chapter and it universally probably would have been the best weapon in that season. So let me just read this right here. Bullet speed reduced by 8%, bullet drop increased by 40%, no longer guaranteed in vaults. Then in Chapter 5 Season 2, they just said like to hell with it, and they vaulted the uncommon and rare editions. They then nerfed the spawn rates of the epic and legendary versions. They then went even further and reduced the bullet speed by 16%, and the spawn chance was reduced by 50%. I mean, they absolutely destroyed this thing. And then in Chapter 5 Season 3, they're like, yeah, like we're just done with this thing. They vaulted it and it's gone. Again, I'm not saying that this thing didn't need a nerf. It absolutely did. It was busted. But I don't know, to this extent, you guys can talk about that in the comment section. Also, underrated, but vaulting the P2X scope is basically a direct nerf to this thing, let's be honest. Next, let's talk about a forgotten about Fortnite weapon. That is the guided missile. And people absolutely love this weapon. Every time in my comment section, there's always a fan club of people that just just absolutely adore the guided missile, and I understand why. It's a really fun, unique weapon. But I'll tell you one thing, it was a lot more fun before they nerfed this thing into the ground. Because now, I'll be honest with you, the guided missile sucks. To my knowledge, the guided missile hasn't even been in the game since Season 6. That was, what, 5 years ago? 6 years ago, even? At this point, it'll probably never come back. And before I go into, like, the specific nerfs of this weapon, this is kind of a unique example because this weapon got indirectly nerfed with players beginning to build better, if that makes sense. The guided missile is really contingent on players not building, right? Because as soon as you hear a guided missile, what do? Just build a box around yourself and you're totally protected from it. You have a ton of time to react. So as players got better at building, the guided missile just naturally got worse. But I mean, okay, let's just go into the specific numbers here. In Season 3, the weapon was added, and shortly after, right, added in update v3.40, and it already got nerfed in update v3.50. They decreased the guided missile maximum turn rate by 75%, and then reduced the guided missile movement speed by 15%. So right there, this thing got absolutely crushed. And then they were like, you know what, this thing's too broken still, we're just vaulting it, get rid of it, right? So they just got rid of it in April 18th, which was 1 week later. And this wasn't even the biggest nerf this weapon received. They brought it back in Season 5, unvaulting the guided missile, but just listen to this laundry list of nerfs. The fuse duration was reduced from 18 to 15 seconds, so instead of flying it for 18 seconds, you only had 15 seconds now. The movement speed was decreased from 1100 to 1000. The reload time increased. They reduced the actual damage of this thing from, listen to this, 105 and 110 damage down to 74 and 77. That is awful. They nerfed it by like 30 damage. And as if this thing wasn't bad enough, they reduced the structure damage from 1100 to 400. The whole point of this thing was that players were building and protecting themselves, and what did they do? They made that even stronger, which inherently made the guided missile weaker. They absolutely destroyed this thing. It is now one of the worst weapons we've ever seen, and what a fall from grace. And I'm gonna make the next one really quick here because there's not a lot of ton to talk about, but it's the grenades. First of all, you used to stack up to 10 of these grenades. I know that was in the preseason, the beginning of the game, but now you can only stack 6 of them. But that's not the big nerf I'm talking about. The big nerf was in Chapter 4, Season 2, where the explosive damage, right, so just the regular damage of the grenade was decreased from 100 to 40. But maybe an even bigger nerf was that the structure damage was decreased from 375 to just 75. To put that into perspective, a grenade, right, a big explosive weapon, was doing the exact same amount of damage to structures as the gold and purple tac shotgun was doing. I mean, that is just unacceptable, right? And what used to take just 1 grenade to kill somebody with 100 white health, it now took 3, and they only drop in stacks of 3, so what are the odds you're gonna hit all 3? And you can't even try and say that they're good for doing explosive damage to structures because they don't. Absolutely insane. They just destroyed the grenades. And probably the most commented item on that poll that I posted was the heavy sniper, and I would entirely agree with you. This one really hurts because the heavy sniper was my favorite weapon of all time, no questions asked. And simply put, the heavy sniper really just has no place in the game anymore. I remember being so excited when this thing launched. I mean, it was a big, heavy, loud, beefy sniper. You could one-shot any wall you wanted to. And I believe it was doing 153 and 157 damage. It could have been 150, 157, but you get what I'm saying. The fact of the matter is that it was doing big time damage, more than rocket launchers, more than anything in the game, actually. Then it got a pretty sizable nerf in Chapter 2, Season 2. They reduced the body shot damage from 150 to 157, so yeah, I was right there, to 126 and 132. So about, give or take, a 24, 25 damage nerf. Yes, that's still a really big deal, but you can still work with that, all right? But here is where it gets painfully ugly. In Chapter 3, Season 2, the heavy sniper headshot damage multiplier was reduced from 2.5x to 1.5x. So instead of dealing 315 and 330 to headshots, you now did 189 to 198. I mean, this is just awful for so many reasons, right? But they also lowered the damage to structures to about half, right? So it was at 1,100 to 660, which, yes, is still a sizable nerf, but that's still not terrible. You can still one-shot some walls. They were then like, yeah, I mean, this is absurd, way too low. So then they increased the headshot multiplier back to 2.5 times for Chapter 4. And what I believe to be the massive nerf that absolutely destroyed the final nail in the coffin to the heavy sniper was lowering the damage to structures to 150. That is unreal. Again, like I said before, that is basically 2 tac shotgun shots, right? The purple and gold tac does 75 damage to structures. So now it's just like, why would you ever use the heavy sniper? You could use a bolt, right, where you might sacrifice the 10 damage, but you get the fast reload speed. You get so many more benefits from using that than using the heavy sniper, where you have the slow reload time. You now longer are not one-shotting walls, which was the main catch with this weapon and a lot of reason why people used it. Again, after these nerfs, there's just no place in the game for a heavy sniper. You would almost take every other sniper instead of this thing, and it's really sad because at one point this was the king of all sniper rifles. Let's be honest, that spot has been taken by the heavy impact sniper rifle, which is basically what the old heavy sniper was. And finally, you guys probably knew this one was going to be on here. It's the Primal shotgun. And wow, I mean, just wow, they absolutely nuked this thing into the ground. And rightly so. This was the best shotgun of all time when it launched, no questions asked. Honestly, maybe the best weapon of all time when it launched. The Primal shotgun is a 2-round burst shotgun, but has a very slow delay between bursts, so it was almost like kind of automatic. And listen to this mega nerf, right? It was added in update v16.0, but they had to have a hotfix in update v16.10 just because it was that strong, where they reduced the damage from 57, 60, 63 to 66 to, get this, 47, 50, 52, and 55, of course, in the respective rarities. An 11 damage nerf on a shotgun is, I mean, just unheard of, right? How do you nerf a shotgun by 11 damage? That just goes to show how strong it actually was when it came out. Not only did they give it one of the biggest damage nerfs of all time, they nerfed the fire rate from 3.73 to 3.33. And just like to add insult to injury, they also increased the pullout time. So every aspect of this weapon, literally every aspect, got worse. It's just a total disaster. And in a matter of a couple of updates, this weapon went from being the best shotgun of all time to, in my opinion, a bottom 3 or 4 shotgun. And I'm honestly really glad that happened because this thing was so annoying and just so spammy. I'm glad it got nerfed, but still, you can't help but feel a little bad for it. It has been forgotten about. It is awful. So yeah, guys, that is my entire list for some of Fortnite's most nerfed weapons. Now, I know there are so many others. You guys commented amazing ones. So I think I'm going to make a part 2 to this video. Let me know in the comment section if you would like to see a part 2, where it would feature weapons like the Stinger SMG or the drum gun, which were absolutely nerfed into oblivion. If you went on to enjoy this video, be sure to leave it a like and use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop, which helps me all the time. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.